Hello, welcome to World Talks. I'm Adam Jasser. Poland said this week it might reopen some border crossings with Belarus, despite ongoing tensions with its eastern neighbor. But then Warsaw reversed course after NATO and EU ally Lithuania, which also borders Belarus, protested. To understand what happened there, I'm joined by Robert Pszczel, Senior Fellow at the Center of Eastern Studies in Warsaw and a former NATO official. Ambassador Pszczel, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Poland and Lithuania have closed most of their border crossings with Belarus in response to violations of their frontiers, either by illegal migrants shipped there by the Belarusian government or airspace incursions. Both countries have complained that Belarus is acting on Moscow's behest to destabilize them. So why did Poland suddenly want to ease the restrictions and open some border crossings?
Well, you're right. I mean, both Poland and Lithuania and frankly, other countries in the region, because it's a broader problem that, Belarus is engineering, both as Russia's accomplice in terms of the war on many levels, economic, military, and of course, let's not forget that, the famous drone operation provocation in Poland, these drones arrived from Belarus, even if they sort of claim to have warned us. So it's a problem which is shared. The behavior of the regime is a problem. Now, for all the countries, in particular, of course, Lithuania and Poland, because they're the two countries bordering from NATO and EU. Belarus. Now, the Polish decision to close the borders, well, one has to remember that it was not all the borders. I mean, after there are one or two crossings which are left to, which can be used. That's the first point. Secondly, of course, you can say that the Lithuanian case with the balloons in large numbers, which it's a clear provocation. It's a very dangerous action, and of course the regime is either allowing this or it's actually behind this, because we know in such autocratic countries nothing happens.
But pardon me for interrupting. So why did Poland considered easing restrictions, given that this pressure from Belarus is there all the time?
Yeah, I apologize, because I was taking time explaining, because the time is a factor. The Polish case was a bit earlier, so there were it has a bit of a history, and Poland was kind of dangling this issue of, look, we might actually open some of the crossings and let's see how you behave. In the case of Lithuania, however, well, the regime has not shown any readiness to respond meaningfully, and it's Lithuania which essentially expects solidarity from its neighbors, from EU, from NATO, because this incursions, this provocation is very serious. So I think in the circumstances, the trademark of a sensible policy is not that it's dogmatic. In other words, perhaps it made sense to actually consider to announce that few additional crossings may be open, and we'll see how Belarusians behave. But after what has happened in relations between Belarus and Lithuania, I think it was the only sensible decision and the right decision, because this is how you behave towards your ally. You have to show solidarity and you have to augment the pressure. Otherwise, this is what autocratic regimes do. They kind of try to play one country against the other. So
right.
In other words, if that was the decision following the conversation between the Polish Prime Minister and the Lithuanian Prime Minister, I think it was a wise one, and that's how allies and neighbors should behave.
Great. So there has been some speculation in the Polish media that Poland was trying to make a goodwill gesture towards Belarus in the hope that this will allow the regime there to free Andrzej Poczobut, a Polish-Belarusian journalist. Is that a credible explanation?
Well, I mean, Poland is, of course, not the only country which has to deal with this, what you call it, I mean, it's a human blackmail. The regime is actually holding hostage, it's imprisoning people, Belarusian, but also of, other nationalities, Poles like Andrzej Pszczel, but also, for example, Americans. So you've seen what the Trump administration has done. They've actually kind of negotiated with the Belarusian regime. They actually gave them a big prize by sort of lifting the isolation. You had a high-ranking U.S. official who came to Minsk, and then there was this extraordinary letter, which was incomprehensible, frankly, from President Trump calling Lukashenko a respected leader, which of course is just not true. So you see that even the biggest Western country, the leader, so-called free world, is actually trying to get its citizens in particular out. So Poland, of course, is trying to do what it can. But at the same time, I think in some respects, perhaps, this is my interpretation, decision to award Andrzej Pszczel, who fully deserves it, of course, he's a real prisoner of conscience, the Sakharov Prize by the European Parliament, that actually may have even more impact, because this makes Mr. Pszczel, an even more known person internationally, and that his case will be kind of, raised by various people, not just by Poland. So yes, it is possible, as you said, that this is one element in this difficult, because it's a difficult process. How do you kind of interact with authoritarian, totalitarian regimes which basically kidnap people or put them in prison to use as a blackmail? So that may be the case, but then there is a bigger picture as well, and I think one has to take other elements into account, and also the fact that Belarus is a country which quite significant difficulties, economic and otherwise. So we'll see how this develops, because it is just not true that Belarus holds all the cards in this duel.
I'd like to change the subject a little and ask you about the latest developments when it comes to U.S. military presence in Europe. We heard reports that they are scaling back their presence in Romania. We know that a new defense strategy is coming up, prepared by the U.S. administration. There were some leaks suggesting that it will actually spell out how many troops the U.S. wants to pull out of Europe. What's your impression? Is the eastern flank getting exposed to these changes and this change of U.S. approach to NATO?
Well, there's, the leaks, it's quite a sort of story in itself, but let's leave it. It doesn't matter ultimately after the event, how the news got out concerning the reductions of U.S. military presence in Romania. Well, that is a fact. It has been confirmed by the government, has been confirmed by NATO officials, and so on. We are waiting other details of this change in the U.S. military posture. I think it's pretty inevitable that there may be some kind of reshuffling, if you like, let's call it this way, which might involve some reductions. Those, from the point of view of the situation, and the point in which we find ourselves in a confrontation with Russia, they are not strategically wise, frankly speaking, but then there's a lot of things that this U.S. administration is doing that it's not strategically wise. But in the grand scheme of things, if, the new announcements, the other announcements, they pass the test of credibility when it comes to, a simple measure that even if there are some reductions or some transfers, that they do not change the overall posture and the strength of the U.S. commitment and the ability to reinforce the allies in critical areas, because that's what we're talking about. It's not just the soldiers we're seeing on the on the video, but it's all the elements from the command elements, logistics, and of course those things which would come the so-called enablers. In other words, the reinforcement. So in the big picture, if the changes are not too great, and the commitments to Poland that there will be zero change, they are, in my view, a test for this administration, because, you know, this we've heard from President Trump, the whole world heard it. So this is a big test for the US, and let's hope it passes it, but some changes are inevitable, and frankly speaking, we should not be seeing any reduction on the eastern flank, but this is the reality of this administration, so there's everything to play for, as they say.
Do you believe Poland is well prepared for such a scenario where the force stays there, but the responsibility for Poland's defense shifts more to the European allies?
Well, the shift in terms of responsibility towards, you know, to put it more on European soldiers, that is something which is not just acceptable, it's happening. Even within, for example, NATO's defense planning, you know, we're talking about 70% of the forces that, that are needed to implement the defense plans, which of course, which are classified, but that much we know, they would be actually provided by Europeans. So this is happening. This is not a mystery. The same goes obviously for the question of spending and so on. Having said this, as I mentioned, you know, there are some aspects, not even talking about the nuclear umbrella, of US input into the European defense that are simply irreplaceable. And that is at the heart of the policy which essentially tries to do everything to maintain this US commitment. We've heard it, that the commitment
Ambassador
will be
Pszczel,
maintained.
thank you. Yes, we
but
have
we
to.
know there are, of course, other pressures. So we have to remain optimistic that this will be the case as well.
Ambassador Pszczel, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And that's all in World Talks. I'm Adam Jasser. Stay with us for more news and analysis.